Okay, gang, everyone can see this? Give me a thumbs up. Yes, okay, great. So creativity, insight, impact, that's what we're all about. That's what you're all about. Okay, so the topic for today is meditation for change agents. So as that suggests, basically what we're going to talk about is the intersection of three things: change, agents, and meditation. So I want to invoke this particular quality of change, which is that it's something that's temporal. You know, it could be change in your beliefs, change in your results, change in your community, change in your business, your organization, how things work, change in the environment, change in, you know, your body, anything. It always happens in time. So there's always this temporal dimension to change, of course, obviously, right? And Andy, I'm just going to ask if you've disabled the chat, can you re-enable it just for a moment? Because I want to give people a minute to just think of a particular change that you are committed to causing, creating, having happen in the world or in your life, or, you know, in some domain, any of those domains, your body, your results, your mind, your mindset, your attitude, anything. Think of a change and then just see if you can identify what is the time horizon of that change. So, you know, maybe you want it by the end of the week. Maybe you're committed that it's, you know, 10 years, a 10-year process. Maybe you're committed that it's longer than your lifetime. Maybe you're committed it's 1 year, you're going to have this result. So just see if you can identify what's the time horizon of the change that you're committed to, and then just type, if you'd like to, type in the chat, what is that time horizon? Career, 3 months. Breaking addiction to sugar within 30 days. Transformation of education and the medicine in this lifetime. Business, 1 to 3 months. Okay, great. So lots of different 3 months, a beautiful place to be. Web page launch 2 months. So you can see all these changes, and they all exist inside of a temporal container, or we could even say a spatial temporal container, because at some level space and time are not two separate things. Now, the next one is agents. Change agents. So the agent is like really the who that is involved in sourcing or causing the change. And the who, well, I got two ways to look at this. Number one is the who's kind of a question. The who's kind of suspect, because the who is like a, you know, at some level of causing change, one can operate from this place where it's all kind of made up, including the who that's making it up is made up. So there is that question, who's the who? But then there's also this thing where the who is important in the change. Like they're connected to what's possible in the change. And like Otto Scharmer has said, the interior condition of the intervener is like the most important thing that actually determines what the outcome of the change process is. So what you're bringing to this actually has an impact on the outcome. And this is where what we talked about last week, you know, each one of these you could say developmental stages of leadership, and we can hold this quite loosely. I mean, this isn't gospel truth, but it's patterns that have been identified where at different levels of development, people have the ability to see and know and do different things, because there's something about the knowing and being that they bring to the world that has them be inside of a different world, which allows them to produce different results. So the interior condition of the intervener makes a difference to the outcomes. And what we what we want to assert in today's practice session is that both meditative practices, and we're going to dive into some of those, and working with certain models of change, we're going to dive into those, has the ability to alter and transform you and accelerate your development along this continuum. Why does working with certain models of change have the ability to do that? Well, it's like what Buckminster Fuller said. If you want to change the way someone thinks, don't try to convince them to think differently. Give them a tool which, by using it, will actually force them to alter how they think. So we call some of these models and maps of change, if you work with them, if you use them in your change projects, they can be psychoactive. They can literally alter your cognition and alter not just what you think, but how you think. So that's why they can accelerate your development as a leader. All right, and then finally, meditation. Well, what's meditation? We're going to assert it is not. One of the mistakes people make is they think it's relaxation. It's actually not what, in terms of what we're doing here, it's not relaxation. It's training the awareness. It's actually work. It's like going to the gym and building the muscles of your awareness. And in particular, there's 3 skills that you're developing when you're meditating. Any technique that you could possibly use, and we're going to use specific ones today, but any technique you use, you're building the muscles of your awareness in 3 ways. Number 1, you're building your concentration skills, which is your ability to focus intensely and in an absorbed way on whatever's important to you, whether that's for a long period of time or a short period of time. You're building your equanimity, which is your ability to just smoothly go through life without being pushed or pulled by whatever is arising. And you're building your sensory clarity. I had a hard time knowing what sensory clarity was until I started to develop it. Yeah. But it's the ability to parse out in very clear detail what's arising in your mind moment by moment by moment. And the more you develop of these 3 skills, well, there's some great benefits to it. One of which is being that it can accelerate your development as a leader. So I want to pause here. And again, we've got a lot of practice to do. So I want to just see if anyone has like a burning question at this point. Maybe Damien's got a burning question. I don't know, maybe, let's see, who's this? Mike Jacobson might have a question. Matt Key, just if someone has like a question, what the heck are you talking about, Justin? I'd like to just create a little space for that. All right, going once, going twice. Okay, cool. All right, so as change agents, you've all got really busy lives, and some of us have the dedication and commitment where we can build in 30 to 60 minutes or whatever. Maybe some of you are doing 2 hours, I don't know, practice in the mornings. That's I highly recommend building like a dedicated period of practice daily into your day. If you look at the highest performers in any field, whether that's, sports or business or, performance, acting, those people disproportionately do have a contemplative practice that they do every day. However, you might not have time for that all the time. And maybe you want to just bring some of those benefits into your life in a very quick way. So we're going to work with a technique today called a microhit. A microhit is where intensity matters much more than duration. And this is really powerful. Like if you take 2 minutes and you are utterly absorbed in the practice of, training your awareness for those 2 minutes and nothing else, and you focus yourself on it, sometimes that can have way more impact than if you sit and, sort of try to meditate for like a half hour. So this is something that actually does have very, very significant impacts into your life if you incorporate micro hits throughout your day. Pepper your day with 3, 4, 5, 6 micro hits. And what that is it's less than 10 minutes of practice. So you can literally set a timer for 5 minutes 3 minutes. We're going to do probably 2-minute micro hits throughout this session today. And the point of it is, though, that you marshal all of your resources. So you set a strong intention, and it's like when you're in the gym, you are going for that pump, right? Like you nothing else, you're focused on it. You're training your mind that way. It's really incredibly powerful. And I wanted to share this technique with you because it's a way of meditating that, when people think about meditating, they probably think about sitting on a pillow for 30 minutes or more. This is something different, but equally impactful and equally important. Now, how do you maximize your focus? How do you spend that 2 to 3 to 5 minutes and get every last bit of goodness out of it? I have some tips for you. Number one is you set a very strong intention at the beginning. So you come to this not like, oh, I should do a micro hit now. Okay, I'll set the timer. It's like, no, it's like you say to yourself, I am doing this because I know I am committed to being, to developing myself as a leader, to get them to maybe you're committed to some level of awakening in the world. Maybe you're committed to making the biggest difference that you can. And you know that as a change agent, having presence and being able to show up and operate from the most creative place possible is going to make a difference for you. So you start the micro hit with very strong intention. Second is you actually visualize the results. Visualize that you go through your day with presence, that you have dignity, that you have poise, that you're leading at the highest possible level, that you're transforming yourself, that you're providing transformation to others around you. And then finally, here's an interesting one, is you can label what you're doing. So, every 20, 30 seconds in your micro hit, you might just bring yourself back to the technique by labeling what's showing up in your awareness. And in this practice that we're going to be doing, we're going to be focusing on space. And I'll get more into it as we do the practice, but you can use the mental label space, or what's even more powerful and stronger is to actually speak that out, to say to yourself, space, something like that as you're meditating, and it will really help bolster your intention and your benefits and results out of the practice. All right. Any burning comments, questions, remarks, anything that someone would like to add about this before we kind of dive into some practice? Because I wanted to say too, as a business person, as a leader, this is a really powerful technique to bookend, like say you have like a really important call that you're doing, or I do this all the time. If I have a meeting that I'm going into and I'm like, oh, I got to be prepared for this one, I can bookend that meeting. I can do a 3-minute micro hit right before and a 3-minute micro hit right after. And what's really interesting about the one after is whatever happened, right? Whatever, it was busy, there was commitments, there was all these kinds of things happen. And maybe there was things that I wanted, maybe I showed up powerfully or maybe I didn't show up powerfully, any of it. That 3-minute micro hit, I can just dive right into the practice and focus my attention. And that really allows the deep mind to process what just occurred in a way that is half, subconscious. And it really does let you constitute yourself more powerfully throughout the day. That's what I found. Okay, so we're going to dive into some practice here. And our practice for these micro hits is going to be focusing on space. So for this first one, I'm going to have you focus your attention on the space in the center of your head. Now, we could do any kind of technique and build those skills of concentration, clarity, and equanimity. And some techniques are easier. Doing a mantra or just focusing on your breath, those techniques are easier. Focusing on space is a little, sometimes you have to grapple with it a bit. Doesn't come naturally for people, but that's okay. Just like working out, if you dive in and marshal your resources, it might feel awkward. You might be like, what am I doing here? But as you do the practice, you'll still get benefits, just like when you're in the gym. In fact, you'll still get very potent benefits, I assert. And what else to say about focusing on space? Oh, the great thing about a micro hit is you're going to marshal all your resources. You're going to set a strong intention. You're going to visualize your results. We're going to do it for a couple minutes and then it's over. So whether it feels awkward or not, you don't have to worry that this is going to be a long time of it. And my exhortation and invitation to you is to throw yourself into this and see what happens. All right, so let's do our first micro hit. I'm just going to pull up my phone and set my timer here. And I will invite you to just take a relaxed posture in your chair. You can close your eyes if you'd like to, and bring your awareness to the space in the center of your head. See if you can sense the space in the center of your head. You're really going for what does that space in the center of your head feel like? You can also turn your inner vision to that space and even turn your hearing to see if you can hear anything from that space in the center of your head. Tune in to the space in the center of your head. That's good. Okay, great. Nice work, everyone. I'll get you to bring your attention back into the conversation. And this is going to be, like I said, it's a roller coaster today. So what we're going to do is just alternate between going into the conversation and out of the conversation. And I want to share with you some models of change. And what's really interesting about these models of change is each developmental leadership level, like we identified those stages, they have the capacity to create and generate different types of models of change. And so I'm going to share with you models of change that come from sort of the thinking that is typical of different levels. And this particular model, I've borrowed this from a firm in California called IDEO. It's part of their design thinking process. And this is a fairly, it's a simple model of change, but oh so potent and oh so fabulous. And it's just this model of diverging and converging. I like to share this one when we talk about mind meditation for change agents, because there is this insight that advanced meditators often have about these two movements in life. There's this expansive movement, that one's awareness can stretch out to cover everything that is this vast, infinite expanse of space. And then there's this contractive awareness where something is arising in consciousness right now at this moment, like a point of light. So it's like the wave and the particle, and the two of them go together. But in this model of change, it's like, okay, the first part, diverging, is like, what if we did this? What could possibly be? You know, let's go get lost in the forest and identify like every single choice in the possibility space and just imagine and think and create. You're creating all these choices. And then when you've identified them all, then you start to converge and you're looking, okay, what's the choice that we really need here? Like, what are we going to refine? What are we actually going to focus on and build? So you're diverging into all this new territory, and then you're converging down into one path forward that you're going to take as a team or as an organization. And it's a beautiful model of change. And now we're going to dive into our second period of practice. I told you it's going to be a roller coaster. So in this micro hit, I'm going to invite you to focus on the space in the center of your chest, So take a moment to stretch up and settle into your chair, into a relaxed, regal posture. And close your eyes if you'd like to. And bring your awareness to the space in the center of your chest. Tune in to that space in the center of your chest. You can visualize it. You can tune your listening, your hearing to that space. And you can feel into that space, sense the space in the center of your chest. What do you notice as you make contact with the space in the center of your chest? Sense it. Feel it. Your sacred heart. Okay, great work. You can bring your awareness back to the conversation. And I'm going to share with you another model of change. This model of change involves these 4 stages in this sort of repeating cycle. It comes from Hurst and Zimmerman, and it's called the eco cycle. And it's just these sort of 4 natural stages of life. And the bottom left, there's the point when something's born and brought into existence. And then, you know, it grows and evolves and it goes up to the top right. And there's this period of maturity where something is just flourishing and, you know, it's at the pinnacle, the peak of its existence. And then, you know, it begins to, you know, fade sometimes. And there's a point where in the change process, there's this questioning of like, what needs to die and what needs to be destroyed, and how do we creatively do that? And then, there's this period where there can be a renewal and maybe a reinvention and a new possibilities and new ideas, and things get reborn, and then it goes into the birth again. And so there's this very natural cycle that we see in nature. We see this in ecosystems and life all over the place. And it's a beautiful way of modeling and mapping change in our lives. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else to say about that. I don't think so. So let's go into another. I really want to take some time to hear what you have to say, but there's so many practices to do. So, and I want to leave as much space at the end for that. So I'm gonna just keep moving us along. So let's move into another period of practice. So in this practice, I'm going to invite you to sense the space in the center of your belly. So kind of just behind your navel, maybe a little bit below that. Tune into the space in the center of your belly. So just sit up in a relaxed, regal posture. Close your eyes if you'd like. And tune into the space in the center of your belly. If you notice yourself distracted by thinking or noise, it's all good. Just let that arise. And like a steering wheel, turn your attention to the space in the center of your belly. Visualize that space. Listen. Feel the space in the center of your belly. That's good. Tune in. Okay, great. Nice work. Bring your awareness back to the room. And on our roller coaster ride, I invite you to consider a third model of change. This model of change comes from Goldstein, Hazy, and I believe it's Goldstein, Hazy, and Lichtenstein. But anyway, this is a different reference. But this change is like the complex systems theory of change. Everything is through this lens of change, everything's a complex dynamical system, and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And when you move something over here, it changes something over here. And systems have these ways of behaving where they can completely reconfigure the whole structure of the system. Now, that can be a belief system, that can be your personality system, that can be your organization, it could be a country, it could be a community, it could be a family, where they can go through these reconfigurations. And what happens is, if you look at panel A1, this is a very simple way of diagramming it, but we think of A1, we call it an attractor, which means it's a space that system gets pulled into being into. And then maybe things aren't working with that attractor, or some people in the system are not happy, or there's things there, there's tension in the system. So what happens in panel 2, you see here, A2 starts, a new attractor starts to emerge. And at some point, there might be this real competition between these two different ways of organizing the system. These two attractors are kind of competing for like which one's actually gonna get realized. And then in this diagram, we see this wave of change leads to this complete refiguration of the system into this new attractor, which we call A2. Now there's two possible ways that this change can occur. If you look here, pathway 1 is like it's very sudden. That bifurcation, that change in the structure of the system, it's like a leap. And 1 minute it's one way, and things, and then things start to get, shaky and wobbly and tense, and boom, this whole new self, this whole new personality structure, this whole new belief system emerges. And this happens to people when, something in their life is so big that they can't metabolize, and it doesn't work for their current belief system. And then bam, they suddenly have a new belief system. Now there's this other way, if you look at pathway 2, which is a little more incremental, it's gradual, builds up over time, little by little by little, and then all of a sudden, you suddenly are in this new attractor. Both of these ways are possible, and this systems theory, complex systems theory map of change lets us distinguish this. It lets us map this out. It lets us plan for this. It lets us understand when it's happening in the world, in our family, in our community, in our country. All right, let's do one additional round of practice. So in this round of practice, I'm going to invite you to hold your awareness evenly over the space in the center of your head, the center of your chest, and the center of your belly. So it's like you've got one toe in each of those 3 spaces. And you might have to toggle back and forth if you find it challenging to hold your attention in all 3 at the same time. Then you can quickly move your awareness between the 3, but see if you can, however stably or unstably, maintain coverage of your awareness over those 3 spaces at the same time. So take a moment to stretch up and settle into your chair, and bring your awareness to evenly cover the space in the center of your chest, the center of your belly, and the center of your head. See if you can hold your awareness over those 3 spaces at the same time. Notice the coherence, the relationship between those spaces. Turn your listening there. Visualize and feel a kind of coverage over the space in the center of your belly, your chest, and your head. That's good. Stay with that. Okay, good work. All right, so bring your awareness back to the conversation, and we're kind of, the roller coaster ride is coming to a little conclusion here. So I want to share with you something interesting here, which is if we look at where those models come from in terms of the, we can take this lightly, but I want to say the level of consciousness that creates them. The diverge converge model, it tends to be possible to think like that in a really nuanced and potent and compelling way, and to create a model like that at this achiever level of consciousness. Now, if I create it at achiever, there's definitely going to be people at expert and diplomat that can use it and access it. And what's cool is it's going to be a little bit psychoactive. It may help accelerate their development into the achiever level. Now, the eco-cycle model tends to come from this individualist, or we sometimes call it reframing model of consciousness. And once it's been created from that level of consciousness, then an achiever can start to map out change processes and work with that level of consciousness, or an expert could, and it may help to accelerate their development and shape their and expand their capacity so that they may develop into this individualist level. The complex systems model of change, to really think like that and to be able to build models and make, and to have a lens of change that you just naturally see change that way, it tends to come from this strategist model of consciousness. And if I'm an individualist or an achiever, once I have the model and the map in my hands, I can start to use it, and that may help me to develop additional capacities. Now, I have one model which I think it comes from the alchemist model of domain of consciousness, and I want to share that with you now. This model comes from Otto Scharmer's work. It's called Theory U. Some of you may know of it. Because I've got my screen sharing up, I can't see everyone's hands, but raise your hand so everyone else can see if you know this model. And it's a really interesting model of opening up your mind, opening up your heart, and then opening up your will. And what that looks like is, your mind has got all these assessments and judgments of, we did it like this way in the past, and, I think it should be this, and blah, 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 blah. And so the opening the mind is to, stop downloading all that stuff from the past and really start to look at what's here right now. That's the way of opening up the mind. And then opening up the heart is to deeply, deeply feel into, the heart, when it's closed, it can be guarded and protective and cynical. So opening up the heart is to kind of, drop all that cynicism and then connect with, okay, like, what's here right now? And what is my relationships with the universe and the world and the people telling me, people around me. And then opening up the will is kind of this, the will is like, it wants to control and it wants to keep everything safe and in line and make sure that everything works out and and things don't go off the rails. And that we know how everything, there's a desire for certainty, but the opening up the will is to kind of let yourself be orchestrated by what wants to emerge in the moment. It's a deep, deep allowing of something, some truth or beauty or goodness that wants to come forth through you or through a situation. And then once that moment of letting go and letting something come forth takes place, it's a critical, pivotal moment in this change model, where then the step up the right side, or the pathway up the right side of the U, is to begin to be that, to begin to enact that and embody that. And this is another change model. And, you know, I don't know if there's been much talking and thinking and writing done on this, but I would assert that this model tends to come from the alchemist level of consciousness. And then once you know, anyone who practices that model and really dives into it, it may help them distinguish new capacities within themselves that accelerate their development.